Welcome, fellow travelers of myth and lore. Today, we're diving into the rich and fiery tapestry of dragon history. Dragons have soared through the skies of our collective imagination for centuries, their legends stretching across cultures, continents, and time itself. From ancient cave drawings to modern fantasy epics, these majestic creatures have left an indelible mark on human history. So, sit back, relax, and let's explore the fascinating origins, variations, and enduring allure of dragons. The dawn of dragons. The world before the dragons was one of endless silence. Eons before humankind laid claim to the earth, it was a realm of quiet stillness, an endless expanse of primordial forests, jagged mountains, and churning oceans. The sun bathed the land in a golden haze, and the moon cast an ethereal glow, but the air carried neither the roar of predators nor the whispers of the wind. It was a time when the earth itself slumbered, awaiting the arrival of something grand, something that would ignite its heart. And then came the dragons. No one truly knew from whence they emerged. Some ancient texts claimed they were born of the stars, cosmic entities that descended in fiery meteors to awaken the sleeping world. Others whispered that they arose from the heart of the earth, birthed in molten fire and forged in the veins of obsidian that crisscrossed the land. Whatever their origins, their arrival marked the end of silence and the beginning of a new age. The first to awaken was Encalthur, the dragon of flame. He burst forth from the core of a volcano, his scales shimmering like molten gold, his eyes twin orbs of blazing fire. When he spread his wings, the heavens themselves seemed to bow, their blue expanse streaked with smoke and ash. Encalthur roared, and the sound shattered the stillness, echoing across the mountains and valleys. His roar was a call, a summons that would awaken others of his kind. From the icy peaks of the north, Sylphra the Frostborn emerged. Her body glistened like crystal, her breath exhaling icy mists that froze lakes and rivers in an instant. She was the antithesis of Encalthur, where he brought fire, she brought cold, where he roared with fury, she moved with silent grace. Yet, there was an undeniable kinship between them, an unspoken understanding that their fates were intertwined. In the depths of the ocean, where sunlight barely reached, another stirred. Typhoreth, the tide bringer, rose from the abyss, his scales iridescent with hues of green and blue. His wings, when spread, mimicked the ebb and flow of waves, and his eyes shone like pearls hidden in the deepest trenches. As he breached the surface for the first time, a tidal wave surged forth, reshaping the coastlines and carving new rivers. These three, Encalthur, Sylphra, and Typhoreth, were the first of their kind, the progenitors of a race that would come to dominate the earth. But they were not alone for long. The roar of Encalthur and the ripples of Typhoreth's ascent awakened others. From the forests came Viridith, the emerald guardian, whose presence caused the trees to grow taller and the earth to bloom. From the stormy skies descended Zorathel, the Thunderwing, trailing lightning and thunder in his wake. The dragons brought with them chaos and creation in equal measure. Encalthur's flames birthed new landscapes, forging deserts and lava fields. Sylphra's frost created glaciers that reshaped valleys, carving fjords and cliffs. Typhoreth's tides brought life to barren coasts, while Zorathel's storms seeded the earth with rain. For centuries, they reigned as the architects of the world, each carving out their own domain and imprinting their essence upon the land. Yet, the dragons were not merely forces of nature. They were beings of immense intelligence and will, capable of thought and emotion as profound as their destructive might. Over time, they began to wonder about their purpose. Were they merely instruments of creation and destruction, or was there more to their existence? It was Validity who first proposed the idea of harmony, that their powers could be used not just to shape the earth but to nurture it. We are more than fire and frost, storm and sea, she proclaimed one day as the dragons convened atop a mountain that touched the clouds. Her voice was melodic, carrying the wisdom of the forest she had tended. This world is our home. Let us not merely shape it, but steward it. The others listened, and for the first time, the dragons sought balance. And Calther tempered his flames, allowing life to thrive even in the scorched lands. Sulphurous Frost became less a force of destruction and more a sculptor of beauty, her glaciers glinting like diamonds in the sunlight. Typhoretha's tides were no longer destructive floods but gentle surges that brought sustenance to the coasts. Zorathal's storms cleansed the skies and nourished the earth with rain. This newfound harmony brought forth an era of unparalleled growth. The earth teemed with life, from the smallest insects to towering beasts. Forests stretched endlessly, rivers flowed with crystalline purity, and the skies were a canvas of shifting hues. The dragons watched over it all, their immense forms gliding through the heavens, guardians of the paradise they had created. But as the dragons nurtured the world, they began to notice something peculiar. In the shadow of their greatness, a new form of life was emerging. Small, fragile creatures with no scales, no wings, and no fire. They walked on two legs and wielded tools of stone and wood. These were the first humans. At first, the dragons paid them little mind. Compared to the grandeur of their kind, these creatures seemed insignificant, their lives fleeting as sparks in the wind. Yet, as the centuries passed, the dragons began to see a spark of something familiar in the humans. They were creators, like the dragons, but their creations were not of fire and frost, storm and sea. Instead, they built shelters and kindled small flames. They painted the walls of caves with images of beasts and stars. They told stories, passing down knowledge from one generation to the next. Curiosity turned to admiration, and admiration to a sense of kinship. The dragons began to interact with the humans, teaching them about the world and its secrets. And Calther showed them how to harness fire, Sylphia taught them the importance of balance, and Typhoreth revealed the mysteries of the tides. The humans, in turn, worshipped the dragons, venerating them as gods and weaving their tales into myths and legends. "We are more than fire and frost, storm and sea," she proclaimed one day as the dragons convened atop a mountain that touched the clouds. Her voice was melodic, carrying the wisdom of the forest she had tended. "This world is our home. Let us not merely shape it, but steward it." The others listened, and for the first time, the dragons sought balance. And Calther tempered his flames, allowing life to thrive even in the scorched lands. Sulphurous Frost became less a force of destruction and more a sculptor of beauty, her glaciers glinting like diamonds in the sunlight. Typhoretha's tides were no longer destructive floods but gentle surges that brought sustenance to the coasts. Zorathal's storms cleansed the skies and nourished the earth with rain. This newfound harmony brought forth an era of unparalleled growth. The earth teemed with life, from the smallest insects to towering beasts. Forests stretched endlessly, rivers flowed with crystalline purity, and the skies were a canvas of shifting hues. The dragons watched over it all, their immense forms gliding through the heavens, guardians of the paradise they had created. But as the dragons nurtured the world, they began to notice something peculiar. In the shadow of their greatness, a new form of life was emerging. Small, fragile creatures with no scales, no wings, and no fire. They walked on two legs and wielded tools of stone and wood. These were the first humans. At first, the dragons paid them little mind. Compared to the grandeur of their kind, these creatures seemed insignificant, their lives fleeting as sparks in the wind. Yet, as the centuries passed, the dragons began to see a spark of something familiar in the humans. They were creators, like the dragons, but their creations were not of fire and frost, storm and sea. Instead, they built shelters and kindled small flames. They painted the walls of caves with images of beasts and stars. They told stories, passing down knowledge from one generation to the next. Curiosity turned to admiration, and admiration to a sense of kinship. The dragons began to interact with the humans, teaching them about the world and its secrets. And Calther showed them how to harness fire, Sylphia taught them the importance of balance, and Typhoreth revealed the mysteries of the tides. The humans, in turn, worshipped the dragons, venerating them as gods and weaving their tales into myths and legends. But not all dragons viewed the humans with kindness. Among the ancient brood was a dragon named Malroth, the Shadow Wing. Unlike his kin, who saw potential in humanity, Malroth saw only a threat. He believed that the humans, with their insatiable curiosity and ambition, would one day rise against the dragons and lay waste to the paradise they had created. "They are like weeds," he growled during a gathering of the dragons. His voice was as cold and sharp as a blade. "Left unchecked, they will overrun the garden we have cultivated. We must destroy them now, before it is too late." The dragons were divided. Ancalthar and his kin argued for coexistence, while Malroth and his followers called for eradication. The debate raged for decades, but no consensus was reached. Tensions grew, and the once united dragons began to splinter, their harmony fractured. The turning point came when Malroth, unwilling to wait for a decision, unleashed his wrath upon a human settlement. His shadow darkened the skies as he descended, his black scales glinting like obsidian. Fire rained down, and the village was reduced to ash. The humans, who had once revered the dragons, now looked upon them with fear and hatred. This act of betrayal sparked the First Dragon War, a conflict that would shape the destiny of both dragons and humans. The skies burned with the fire of their battles, and the earth trembled beneath their might. Ancalthar and his allies fought to protect humanity, while Malroth sought to eradicate them. The humans, caught in the crossfire, began to forge weapons of their own, learning to fight the very beings they had once worshipped. The war was long and brutal, leaving scars upon the earth that would never fully heal. Mountains were shattered, forests burned, and oceans boiled. But in the end, it was not strength that decided the outcome, but sacrifice. Ancalthar, the first dragon, gave his life to defeat Malroth, using his own flames to consume the Shadow Wing in a blaze so fierce that it turned the night into day. With Malrotha's death, the war came to an end, but the world had changed. The dragons, once rulers and guardians, retreated to the far corners of the earth, their numbers dwindling. Humanity, now free from their shadow, began to rise, building civilizations and forging their own destiny. Yet, the memory of the dragons lingered, etched into the myths and legends that would be passed down through the ages. And so, the Age of Dragons came to a close, but their legacy endured. The world they had shaped remained a testament to their power and wisdom, and their stories served as a reminder of the delicate balance between creation and destruction. Though they faded into the mists of time, the dragons were never truly gone. They lived on in the hearts and minds of those who remembered, their roars echoing in the winds and their flames burning in the souls of dreamers. Dragons of the East. In Eastern mythology, dragons took on a more benevolent role. Chinese dragons, or long, are among the most famous and revered in the world. Unlike their Western counterparts, Chinese dragons are symbols of wisdom, prosperity, and good fortune. They are often depicted as serpent-like creatures with the antlers of a deer, the claws of an eagle, and the scales of a fish. In Chinese mythology, dragons are celestial beings who control water, rain, and the seasons. The Dragon Kings, powerful deities of the seas, ruled over the four cardinal directions and were often called upon by farmers to bring rain for their crops. During the Lunar New Year, dragon dances are performed to invoke their blessings, emphasizing their role as protectors and benefactors. In Japan, dragons share many traits with their Chinese cousins but often have a more aquatic nature, associated with rivers, lakes, and the ocean. Ryujin, the dragon god of the sea, is a central figure in Japanese folklore, known for his underwater palace made of coral and his ability to grant magical artifacts to worthy mortals. Dragons of the West. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the western skies in hues of molten gold and fiery crimson, a warning of the creatures that slumbered deep within the mountains. The dragons of the West were no ordinary beasts. They were creatures of might, wisdom, and fire, their legends interwoven with the tales of kingdoms long fallen. In the lands of Erinder, they were both feared and revered, for where dragons roamed, both ruin and glory followed. The Great Divide. Long ago, when the world was younger and the gods still walked among mortals, the dragons of the west ruled the skies. Unlike their kin in the east, who were known for their wisdom and benevolence, the western dragons were forces of raw power and pride. They lived atop the jagged peaks of the Shardspire Range, a towering wall of mountains that cleaved the continent in two. These dragons were not mere beasts but ancient sentinels, guardians of secrets older than time. It was said that the greatest of these dragons, Calvarix the Emberborn, could incinerate entire armies with a single breath. His scales shimmered like molten gold, and his eyes burned with the fury of 1,000 suns. But Calvarix was more than a monster, he was a king. Beneath his wings, the western dragons united, enforcing a delicate balance between mortals and the natural world. Those who sought to plunder the riches of the mountains without tribute faced his wrath, their ashes scattered to the winds. The Great Divide. Long ago, when the world was younger and the gods still walked among mortals, the dragons of the west ruled the skies. Unlike their kin in the east, who were known for their wisdom and benevolence, the western dragons were forces of raw power and pride. They lived atop the jagged peaks of the Shardspire Range, a towering wall of mountains that cleaved the continent in two. These dragons were not mere beasts but ancient sentinels, guardians of secrets older than time. It was said that the greatest of these dragons, Calvarix the Emberborn, could incinerate entire armies with a single breath. His scales shimmered like molten gold, and his eyes burned with the fury of 1,000 suns. But Calvarix was more than a monster, he was a king. Beneath his wings, the western dragons united, enforcing a delicate balance between mortals and the natural world. Those who sought to plunder the riches of the mountains without tribute faced his wrath, their ashes scattered to the winds. The First Betrayal. The peace between dragon and man was shattered when King Aldrin of Valorith, blinded by greed, ventured into the Shardspire Range. Aldrin's kingdom was crumbling, his coffers empty, and his people starving. Desperate, he led an army into the mountains, seeking the fabled Crucible of Flames, an artifact said to grant the wielder the power to control dragons. Aldrin's forces marched under the cover of night, their armor blackened to blend with the shadows. They believed they could steal from the dragons unnoticed. But the dragons saw everything. When the first soldier stepped onto sacred ground, the skies erupted in fire. Calvarix and his kin descended like a storm, their roars shaking the earth. Aldrin's army was obliterated and the king himself was taken captive. Legend says that Calvarix offered Aldrin a choice: surrender his crown and swear his kingdom to the dragons, or face death. Proud and unyielding, Aldrin refused. In a final act of defiance, he plunged his sword into Calvarix's chest. The blade, enchanted by the king's mages, pierced the dragon's scales, and for the first time in centuries, dragon blood was spilled. Calvarix survived, but the wound festered, and with it grew a hatred for humanity that would burn for generations. The Dragon Wars. With their king weakened, the western dragons grew divided. Some sought revenge against humanity, while others believed in restoring the fragile balance. The once united flight splintered into factions, and the Shardspire Range became a battleground. Villages at the mountain's base were caught in the crossfire, their skies blackened with ash. Among the chaos, a new threat emerged: the Dragon Binders, a secretive order of sorcerers who learned to harness dragon blood to forge weapons of unimaginable power. These weapons, known as dragonlances, could wound even the mightiest of dragons. The Dragon Binders' influence spread, and soon, kingdoms across the west began hunting dragons, their bones and blood traded like currency. But dragons are not so easily extinguished. For every dragon slain, two more rose in fury. The war raged for decades, leaving the West scarred and barren. The once thriving kingdoms became ruins, their banners forgotten, while the dragons retreated deeper into the mountains, nursing their hatred. The Last Flight. Centuries passed, and the dragons of the West became myths. Only the oldest of songs remembered their names, and few dared to venture into the Shardspire range. But whispers spoke of a new dragon, one unlike any before. This dragon, known as Valeth the Black Flame, was said to be born of shadow and fire, her breath capable of turning even stone to ash. Some claimed she was the daughter of Calvarix, a harbinger of the dragon's return. Valeth did not seek to destroy. Instead, she sought to unite. Unlike her ancestors, she saw the mistakes of both dragons and men. She traveled to the forgotten ruins of Valorith, where she unearthed the Crucible of Flames, the very artifact King Aldrin had sought centuries before. With it, she planned to forge a new era, one where dragons and mortals could coexist. But not all dragons shared her vision. The fractured factions of the West saw her as a threat, and a new war loomed on the horizon. Valeth's roar echoed across the land, a call to dragons and mortals alike. Some answered, while others prepared for battle. A fateful alliance. In the small village of Cragsmere, a young blacksmith named Kaelin found himself drawn into the conflict. Kaelin, the last descendant of King Aldrin, carried the bloodline cursed by Calvarix himself. He stumbled upon a fragment of the dragon lance, its surface etched with ancient runes. When Valeth appeared before him, her shadow darkening the village, Kaelin expected death. Instead, she spoke of peace. "You carry the weight of your ancestors' sins," Valeth said, her voice deep and resonant. "But you also carry the strength to right them. Will you stand with me, or will you let the past devour the future?" Kaelin's choice would shape the fate of the West. Together, they embarked on a journey to unite the scattered factions, both dragon and human, against those who sought to reignite the flames of war. Dragons across the world. As the sun rose over a world divided by oceans and mountains, one thread wove through every corner of the globe, the tale of dragons. These magnificent creatures, both feared and revered, had carved their legacy into the myths of countless civilizations. Each culture shaped its dragons to reflect their hopes, fears, and imaginations, creating a tapestry of fire-breathing beasts, wise protectors, and terrifying adversaries. The Eastern Guardians. In the mist-shrouded mountains of China, the lung dragons swirled through the skies. Unlike their Western counterparts, these serpentine creatures were symbols of power, wisdom, and prosperity. The people believed the lung controlled the rains, ensuring bountiful harvests. Legends told of the dragon kings who ruled undersea palaces and guided the balance of nature. In Japan, dragons like Ryujin were associated with the seas, guarding treasures in coral palaces beneath the waves. They were said to gift humanity with pearls of wisdom or strike with tempestuous fury when disrespected. The Western Behemoths. Across the rolling hills of Europe, dragons were darker, more menacing figures. They were often gatekeepers to vast treasures, guarding gold that glimmered in the firelight of their lairs. The tale of Fafnir, a cursed dragon from Norse mythology, told of greed's corrupting power. Meanwhile, St. George's valiant slaying of a dragon symbolized the triumph of good over evil in Christian lore. The Welsh dragon, Wydreig Gach, stood apart as a symbol of resistance and pride, its red form emblazoned on the banners of the land's defenders. For the Celts, dragons were more than monsters, they were guardians of the land and the people's spiritual essence. The Desert Serpents. In the scorching deserts of the Middle East, dragons were seen as jinn-like beings, embodying chaos and destruction. Persian mythology spoke of Zahak, a dragon-like figure whose shoulders bore serpents that demanded human brains for sustenance. These tales warned against unchecked ambition and the corrupting power of evil. The Serpents of the Americas. The feathered serpent gods of the Americas bridged the gap between humanity and the divine. The Aztecs revered Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent, as a god of wisdom and wind, a bringer of culture and learning. Meanwhile, in North America, indigenous tribes spoke of the Payasaw, a monstrous dragon that lurked in the cliffs, inspiring both fear and awe. The Dreamtime Beasts. Far in the ancient lands of Australia, the Aboriginal peoples told of the rainbow serpent, a creator being that carved rivers and valleys into the landscape. This dragon was neither good nor evil but a force of nature to be respected and honored. The evolution of dragons in modern times. As humanity raced toward technological advancement, the dragons of old were believed to have retreated into the folds of myth. Yet, their essence, an undying force of nature and imagination, refused to fade. In modern times, dragons have evolved beyond their legendary depictions, morphing into powerful symbols that bridge ancient lore and contemporary culture. The Industrial Revolution marked the first shift in how dragons were perceived. Once feared as harbingers of destruction, they became symbols of progress and power. Artists reimagined dragons, entwining them with the towering smokestacks of factories, their fiery breaths now resembling the steam that fueled the engines of industry. Literature followed, weaving tales where dragons represented the duality of humankind's ambition, capable of immense creation and catastrophic destruction. In the 20th century, dragons experienced a renaissance in popular culture. With the emergence of fantasy literature, they became allies, foes, and even tragic antiheroes. J.R.R. Tolkien's Smaug, for instance, reminded readers of the cunning greed that dragons could embody. Yet, in the same era, Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Riders of Pern series redefined dragons as intelligent, loyal companions, guardians of their human allies against a hostile world. This duality cemented dragons as multifaceted creatures, resonating with a global audience. As the digital age dawned, dragons leaped from the pages of books to the glowing screens of cinema and gaming. The rise of CGI technology breathed new life into them, making their scales glisten, their wings ripple, and their roars echo across theaters. Franchises like Game of Thrones and The Hobbit brought dragons to the forefront, captivating audiences worldwide. They were no longer confined to medieval fantasy, they adapted, appearing in futuristic dystopias, alternate dimensions, and even as playful companions in animated films. But beyond entertainment, dragons evolved into symbols of identity and empowerment in modern society. Across Asia, they continued to be revered as emblems of strength, wisdom, and luck, finding their place in celebrations like Lunar New Year and art forms like tattooing. In Western cultures, they became icons for rebellion, individuality, and self-expression. The dragon, once an external force to be conquered, was now internalized, a representation of one's inner fire and untamed spirit. In the scientific realm, dragons inspired breakthroughs as well. Paleontologists, driven by the legends of fire-breathing beasts, unearthed fossils of prehistoric creatures that bore striking resemblances to dragon lore, pterosaurs with wingspans wider than a bus and theropods with sharp, jagged teeth. The discovery of such creatures fueled a deeper fascination with the possibility that dragons, in some form, might have once walked, or soared, on this earth. Meanwhile, environmentalists adopted the dragon as a metaphor for the planet itself, vast, powerful, and untamed, yet in desperate need of respect and care. Campaigns to preserve natural habitats often featured dragons as guardians of forests, oceans, and skies, a stark reminder of humanity's responsibility toward the earth. As the 21st century unfolded, the digital realm gave dragons an entirely new playground. In the virtual worlds of video games and online communities, dragons became avatars of strength and adventure, embodying both the ancient and the cutting edge. Artificial intelligence even joined the fold, creating dragons that could think, speak, and interact with humans in ways once thought impossible. The evolution of dragons in modern times is a testament to their timelessness. No longer bound by the chains of fear or the constraints of mythology, they have become infinite, shapeshifters that adapt to the dreams and fears of each new generation. From the blazing skies of ancient epics to the glowing screens of the digital age, dragons continue to inspire, reminding humanity that some legends are too powerful to ever truly fade. Why do dragons endure? Why have dragons endured for thousands of years? Perhaps it's because they embody the duality of human nature, both the capacity for creation and destruction. They challenge us to confront our fears, embrace our aspirations, and imagine worlds beyond our own. Whether as fearsome beasts, wise guardians, or loyal companions, dragons continue to inspire wonder and creativity. As we conclude our journey through the history of dragons, we invite you to ponder your favorite dragon stories. What do they mean to you? How have they shaped your view of myth and magic? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with fellow lovers of legend.